Here's the question. With this cancel culture movement, they specifically mentioned Black Lives Matters, the organization. Is Christianity next? So, culturally, right, the movement that's going on is, all sorts of things are getting put on the chopping block as being bad and horrible and need to get rid of, and so is Christianity next?
Well, it's already happening with Christianity. There are numerous examples we can point to. Some of them most recent, the state of Nevada, essentially, with the lockdowns going on and the quarantine with COVID-19 and everything, originally, churches and other institutions were temporarily shut down so that we could flatten the curve and make sure that there weren't more sick people than hospitals could care for and treat. And once the curve had sufficiently been flattened, then we needed to open the economy back up, because if we keep everything closed down, people are going to lose their jobs. There's not going to be any tax money coming in, all of these kinds of things, and that's going to wreck the economy. Not to mention the social effects on people, because you can't keep people isolated for too long, because we're wired for community. So just in the lockdowns alone, I've seen studies saying that there have been more suicides in the past few months than there have been in the past several years combined. So you can't just keep people isolated like this. So a very recent example of this kind of canceling churches is regarding Nevada, because they said that organizations like casinos can open up and have as many people in gambling there as they can fit, but churches can only meet with no more than 50 people. And so Calvary Chapel of Nevada took Nevada to the Supreme Court and said, look, they're violating the First Amendment by not allowing us to open to full capacity. And the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, basically split. The liberal justices and Justice Roberts sided with Nevada against the churches, and the conservative justices sided with Calvary Chapel. So the Supreme Court, essentially by this 5-4 decision, said that Nevada is within their rights to limit church services, which of course is a violation of the First Amendment. And Neil Gorsuch, one of the conservative justices, wrote a very scathing 1-paragraph indictment of the Supreme Court's decision to side with Nevada as opposed to the churches, which is against the Constitution. So that's a very recent example, but we also see other examples with conservative business owners like Barronelle Stutzman, who I believe is from Oregon and runs a bakery. And then you have, I think she's a florist. And then you have a baker from Colorado who is a Christian and has been actually targeted by the left and by the Colorado government themselves, and they've had their hands slapped by the Supreme Court because they keep going after this baker whose name escaped me at the moment. And so these conservative business owners who are also Christians are being targeted by the left and even targeted by state governments because they refuse to participate in ceremonies like same-sex weddings and other things which oppose their deeply held convictions. We would say they're moral convictions, but in order to stand up for their rights, we have to call them religious convictions as well, because they have a religious right under the First Amendment to freedom of speech and to freedom of religion. So we actually do see now examples of Christian business owners, Christian churches who are essentially trying to, the left is essentially trying to cancel. So we're actually seeing a lot of examples of that now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Was the question, is Christianity next or are churches next?
It specifically Christianity, but
I guess it doesn't matter. I was just wondering what the frame of. I would say it's Christianity now. You see, if you read any of the news, you see all the attacks on our Catholic brothers and sisters now, with the Juniper Serra statues being ripped down, Jesus statues being defaced, one spray painted with hate. And I would suggest that those are the easiest targets because they're the most ornamental, but that doesn't mean that it won't eventually reach to the little white building that's a church that doesn't really look like a church except for the cross on top, because it'll eventually get there. And a Pew Research came out maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was reading, and I don't know about the Black Lives Matter thing. I found it odd that like 60% of the people protesting in the BLM movement were white. So this issue has nothing to do either, I don't think, with racial tensions. I think that there's a more nefarious thing going on. That's just me. I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I do believe that this is a battle of good versus evil, where it's not Democrat and Republican. That's not what I'm saying. I think it is good versus evil. And to fundamentally transform this nation, which was founded, its laws are founded on Judeo-Christian values, you eventually have to go after two things that are the foundation of our society, which is the family, which they've been doing for years, and now religion, specifically Christianity, because it is the most foundational of the religions in this nation. You just can't get away from that. I mean, Moses with the 10 Commandments is on the Supreme Court. You've got the 10 Commandments in our halls of Congress. You've got all kinds of religious statues where, it won't surprise me that those are taken down. It wasn't too many years ago that a judge in Alabama said, I'm not going to remove the 10 Commandments out of the courthouse, right? Where that fight was going on, whether you agree with it or not. I'm just saying that I think Christianity is now, and I'd like to also add that while I think it's a battle of good versus evil, ultimately, as Paul says, we fight not against flesh and blood. I think that that's good for the church. I think it's good. It will end up being good for us. The church was built on the blood of martyrs. Not that I'm wanting to die or have a wish to endure that type of persecution, but it's easy not to need God when you're in a society where everything's come so easy. And maybe it'll help us refocus on what's important. And maybe it'll help us refocus our faith and our commitment to Jesus Christ. The church always seems to explode in the places where there's the most persecution, which, by the way, is not America yet. I mean, look at China, look at the Middle East, look at the underground churches, look at Africa, and so I think it's Christianity now. I just think that it's being more open against Christianity in America today because of the cancel culture, because it's sort of in vogue to tear down statues. It's in vogue to deface things. It's in vogue to protest. It's in vogue to do these things. And it's easy to find that enemy. It's easy to find an enemy like Jesus Christ because he is so controversial to people that don't believe. He's so controversial in his stance. And I think in Scripture, or maybe Jesus himself, that said he would be hated, so we will be hated. So it shouldn't really come as a surprise. I'm not looking forward to it. I feel sorry for my children. I hope that they don't have to endure it worse than what is happening now. But I do think that it's Christianity now for sure.
Yeah, and Jack Phillips, by the way, is the name of that Colorado baker I was trying to think of.
I think that's what they're trying to do. And you look at all their writings right now, they are getting every group that is inherently against God or Christ to join forces together to create this larger movement. But if you listen to their top leaders, they've openly admitted that they want nothing to do with God or Christianity or the family. They actually don't want the patriarchic family. They've made it quite clear on that. That's another thing they want to dismantle. It's funny that they don't like slavery, and yet one of their top leaders was arrested for sex trafficking. That's slavery.
Right.
So even their leadership has problems, but their leadership ideology opposes everything that we have as a Christian. And it's gaining power because if you listen to oh my gosh, I just lost his name. Oh, I watch this guy every day. Help me out, Patrick. Who is he?
I don't even know.
Come on, I post his stuff all the time. He's a blog. He's on TV. an openly admitted Jew, and he fights against all these guys and gives the information.
Is it Ben
Who is-
Shapiro?
Who?
Ben Shapiro?
Prager.
Yes, Shapiro.
Oh,
Yes. He has said so many things. And one of the things that he said the other day is get ready. The only way they're going to win is to get everybody together. All by themselves, they're nobody. But because they're putting all the groups together, even the list that you just read, did you see how many people they had put together to create their group? They put everybody in their group who's against all these things. By themselves, they mean nothing, but now they're creating a coalition. And that coalition is still the same thing that we have always had to fight as Christians. They stand opposed to God, they stand opposed to Christ, and then we stand for God, we stand for Christ. So they're going to oppose us. I think it's getting stronger and stronger every day. You're in California, you're not even supposed to sing in church right now. And
No, we're
the
not.
pastors just made a comment to Newsom that you don't get to regulate us. That's not what we're about. And I didn't read the second half of the article, but that was pretty interesting for a pastor to say, hey, we're still meeting. You don't regulate us.
Yeah, you're talking about John MacArthur, right?
Who?
John MacArthur? Is he the pastor you're talking about?
I think so. I have trouble remembering names sometimes. Okay.
Okay, yeah, because I think he's in Los Angeles. I could be wrong about that, but I know that he recently wrote something that he published online that he talked about how they're not going to acquiesce to the governor's demands, and in Fresno. I live in Sanger. Fresno's about 20-minute drive from here. There was actually a big protest at City Hall with the area pastors about Governor Newsom essentially shutting down Fresno churches. And yeah, we're not supposed to sing in church. We're not supposed to gather. He's got everything closed down. Now that's not to say that every church is necessarily protesting. In fact, the Lutheran churches are actually they're actually kind of I don't want to say getting in line because it's not like they're subservient to the government or anything, but our Lutheran churches are saying that we're going to keep closed until they feel that it's safe to open back up. And so we've actually been live streaming our services. So not every church kind of feels the same way, but yeah, we had a rather sizable protest yesterday of area pastors at City Hall in Fresno who were basically saying that you can't keep us closed down because enough is enough. Christians need to gather publicly for worship, and we'll take measures to be safe. We'll have people wear masks and we'll have hand sanitizer, all this thing, but all this stuff. But you can't keep us closed down. That's not your right to do so.
Two things that I want to add. One, I remember, and it kind of bugged me that this didn't, get more attention. I remember during, I don't know if it was the lead up to Obama's election or it was definitely during his administration, I started noticing that high profile people on the left, Democrats and others, started referring to freedom of worship, not freedom of religion. And that's a very interesting distinction because it's the idea that, well, you're free to, what you do over there in private in that building, that's whatever. You can go worship. You can go do however you want to do over there. That's your business. Keep it to yourself. Whereas religion is that's foundational. That's worldview. You cannot practice religion privately. If it's not being lived out, to what degree can you actually say you believe it?
Right.
It affects everything we do. And so it's an interesting shift how that happened.
Yeah. That's the way the left works, though. That's how they're able to affect societal change is,
Right.
and it's just a basic rule of debate that whoever controls the definitions wins the debate. And this is something that the right, never really learned and has never really gotten very good at. But the left excels at it, is that they redefine things, and that's how they affect social change, because they start making argument, like when they tried to legalize same-sex marriage, it wasn't about it wasn't about giving them special privileges, which is what it was really about, but they were arguing it's about marriage equality. They just want equality and to be treated equally under the law. But of course, they weren't arguing for marriage equality because they weren't arguing for other types of marriage, like polygamy or, any other types of marriage. They were just arguing for same-sex marriage. So their term marriage equality sounded good to the average person, because who wouldn't be for equality? But it wasn't what they were really arguing for. But nevertheless, they kind of excel at changing definitions and winning societal support that way. Abortion is no longer killing an unborn child. Abortion is now just choice. If you oppose abortion, you basically treat women like animals, and you don't give them the choice to do whatever they want with their body. They totally overlook the fact that we're actually talking about killing a human child. And so if you oppose leftist ideas, you're a bigot, you're a misogynist, you're a racist, all these kinds of things. And so that's how
you listening the other day to me or something? I got called every one of those things that you just said.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of
an argument. They redefined everything I said and then threw everything out there. Whose side are you on again? I'm confused.
I know. I've had a lot of discussions, especially being a pro-life advocate. I have a lot of discussions with people on the left, and this is a common tactic among them. So it just comes from experience, really. So yeah, that's how they they never win the argument. They just redefine the terms and win support that way. So,
right, which kind of, the second, back to the main question that was asked about, this canceling, Christianity, they coming after us. There was, and I believe it's been taken down because it really was ridiculous. Well, I forget what the museum was. It's part of the Smithsonian. They posted a thing that was about whiteness, what white culture, defining white culture. It had this list of things. And on that list of things defining what is white culture, it mentioned religion, and it had that Christianity, where did I see it? Christianity is the norm, that anything other than Judeo-Christian is foreign, and no tolerance for deviation from, that concept of God. And they're saying that's whiteness, which is, you put that into the overall worldview. Whiteness is bad. That's the worldview. This is one thing that so many people just aren't really understanding. I'll give a little plug. Look on the channel. We did a 2-part series a few weeks ago on critical race theory and what all that's about. It divides everything into oppressors and the oppressed. And if you belong to that oppressor class, then you automatically are the bad guy. You need torn down. Your system is wrong, and everything about it is what needs to be torn down.
Yeah,
and Christianity is put in that oppressor class. And so just by the logic of the worldview, they have to come after Christianity. They have to, because it's automatically part of the culture of the oppressors. And so it needs to be torn down.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing about that too, is that they call it white, but they really don't mean white. Because they label basically anything that disagrees with them as white. Because, number one, Christianity was started by Jews. And, people are quick to point out, Jesus wasn't white. Well, okay, yeah, Jesus wasn't white, so why are you calling religion a white man's religion? It's a Jewish religion that was started by Jewish people. And so it seems to me that they just label anything they don't like as white, regardless of their skin color. It reminds me of a recent comment by Joe Biden on it when he went onto some podcast where he said, if you don't consider voting for Joe Biden, you ain't white, or you ain't black, rather. So he thinks if you don't vote for if you're not going to vote for Joe Biden, you're not black. So it's just like they label everything they don't like as white, regardless of what the actual skin color is. And one of my favorite things on that graphic that you're talking about is they actually said that that scientific rational thinking is white also, which was like, how could that not be offensive to non-white people? So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've about answered that one and wandered around and answered a few other things related. So let's
right. Well, I could talk for a long time on social issues.
Glory to you, King of all days, Glory to you in the highest place.